picture this, you're at a fancy banquet, right? And you really got to use the restroom. But etiquette dictates you can't leave the table
Oh, no.
for 11 days.
11 days.
Yeah, that's the story we have today. And that's what supposedly happened to Tycho Brahe.
Wow.
He's this famous 16th century astronomer.
Now it's dedication to science.
Talk about commitment, right?
It really is. And you know what's even more impressive?
What's that?
Brahe made all these incredible observations before the invention of the telescope.
Wow. So he's out there mapping the stars with just his naked eye.
Exact. Can you imagine the patience that must have taken?
I mean, it really shows you how far astronomy has come.
It does. It makes you appreciate the dedication of those early astronomers.
And back then, the stars, they were considered unchanging.
Right. It was a completely different worldview.
But then comes Brahe with his observations, and he just blows that whole idea apart.
Oh, absolutely. His observations, especially the supernova he documented in 1572.
Right, in 1572.
It challenged everything people thought they knew about the cosmos.
It's amazing how one observation can change everything.
Truly is. And you know what's even more fascinating?
What's that?
Brahe's path to becoming this astronomical pioneer,
Okay.
it wasn't exactly a straight line.
What do you mean?
Well, it actually started with him being kidnapped as a baby.
What kidnapped?
Yeah, by his own uncle, no less.
You're kidding.
I'm not that. His uncle, Jorgen Brahe, wanted an heir desperately.
Oh, wow.
And since Tycho's father already had another son, well, he just took matters into his own hands.
That's wild. It sounds like a plot from a movie.
It does, doesn't it?
So how did Tycho even get into astronomy after all that?
Well, despite that crazy start, he had a pretty privileged education.
Okay.
His family, they wanted him to go into law.
Law?
Yeah, but of course, fate had other plans.
Oh, I bet. So tell me about it.
So picture young Tycho as a teenager witnessing a total solar eclipse. He's completely blown away by this event and how accurately it was predicted.
Yeah.
And that sparks this lifelong fascination with the stars.
So a total eclipse changed his life.
You could say that it ignited a passion in him, a real thirst for knowledge.
It's amazing how these seemingly small events can have such a huge impact.
I know, right? And from that point on, he starts studying astronomy in secret, even though his family's not too happy about it.
Rebelling against the family for the stars.
Exactly. He couldn't ignore his calling.
So what happens next?
Well, this thirst for knowledge leads him on a grand tour of Europe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he immerses himself in all these scientific circles, honing his skills, challenging theories.
Soaking it all up?
Exactly. And it's during one of these intellectual adventures that he has a rather infamous encounter.
Infamous? What happened?
Well, he gets into this duel.
A duel? Like with swords?
Yeah, it's said that it all started because of a heated argument over a mathematical formula.
Oh, boy.
Things escalated, and, well, Brahe ended up losing a bit more than just the argument.
Let me guess, this is the story about his nose.
You got it, the legendary prosthetic nose.
Wow, a duel over math. That's intense.
It does show you the passion of those times.
It really does.
But Brahe was more than just a hothead. He was brilliant.
Right.
He charted the positions of over 777 stars.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know, and all with astonishing accuracy without any telescope.
It's mind-boggling to think about how he did that.
And all of that work led him to create Uraniborg, his masterpiece.
Uraniborg, his own personal observatory.
You could say that, but it was more than just an observatory. It was like a scientific palace.
Really? Tell me more.
Well, the king of Denmark, King Frederick II,
Okay.
he gifts Brahe this whole island.
A whole island just for him.
Yeah, and on that island, Brahe builds Uraniborg.
Wow, so he had his own island with this incredible observatory.
Exactly. It was state-of-the-art instruments, laboratories, even a printing press.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
It was unheard of at the time, a true testament to Brahe's vision.
And I bet he had all the comforts, too.
Oh yeah, he even had indoor plumbing installed.
Indoor plumbing back then.
It was a luxury, a sign of how much the king valued his work.
So he had it all a supportive king, his own island, this incredible observatory. It sounds like a dream come true.
It does, but unfortunately, things took a turn.
Oh no, what happened?
Well, a new king came to power, Christian V, and he wasn't as keen on funding Brahe's extravagant projects.
Oh, so they didn't get along.
Not really. This led to a falling out, and Brahe was forced to leave Denmark and find a new patron.
That's sad after all he had built there.
It is a reminder that even the greatest minds can get caught up in political turmoil.
So what happens to Brahe after he leaves Denmark?
Well, that's a story for another time. So Brahe ends up in Prague, right?
Right, exiled from his beloved Uraniborg.
Yeah, but he finds a new patron, Emperor Rudolf II.
And that's where he meets Johannes Kepler.
Yes, Kepler, this young, ambitious astronomer.
The guy who championed the heliocentric theory, right?
That's the one, the sun at the center of the solar system.
Pretty radical idea back then.
Oh, absolutely. A complete shift from the Earth-centered view that most people, including Brahe, still believed in.
So how did these two end up working together?
Well, Brahe needed Kepler's math skills to help him analyze all the data he'd collected.
So it was a collaboration of necessity.
In a way, but Kepler, he was eager to get his hands on Brahe's data.
Because he thought it could prove his theory.
Exactly.
That's some serious scientific ambition.
It really is. You have these two brilliant minds, both convinced they have the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe.
But with completely different approaches.
Exactly. Brahe, the meticulous observer, grounded in his data.
Right.
And Kepler, the theoretical visionary, searching for mathematical harmony.
I can only imagine the arguments they must have had.
You know, there were clashes for sure.
Really?
They argued about planetary orbits, challenged each other's interpretations, even had periods where they wouldn't speak to each other.
Sounds intense.
It was, but, through it all, there was a grudging respect.
So did they ever find any common ground?
Well, their collaboration had its moments both of synergy and conflict.
The ups and downs of scientific progress.
Exactly, and sadly their partnership was cut short by Brahe's sudden death in 1601.
This is where things get mysterious, right?
It is. The official cause of death was a bladder infection, but the circumstances were strange.
So tell me what happened.
Well, the story goes that Brahe attended this grand banquet hosted by the emperor.
Okay.
And because of strict court etiquette, he couldn't leave the table to relieve himself.
You're kidding.
Nope. He supposedly held his bladder for hours.
I heard it was for 11 days.
Yeah, that's probably an exaggeration.
Oh, boy.
But it does show you the strict social customs of the time and maybe Brahe's stubbornness, too.
So something definitely happened at that banquet.
Oh, yeah, and the plot thickens because centuries later,
What happened?
Brahe's remains were exhumed.
Okay.
And they found high levels of mercury in his system.
Mercury poisoning. Are you saying he was murdered?
That's what some people believe.
Wow, this is like a real-life whodunit.
It is, and there are a few prime suspects.
Okay, like who?
Well, naturally, suspicion fell on Kepler.
I can see why he inherited Brahe's data after his death.
Right, he had the motive and the opportunity.
But is there any evidence linking him to the poisoning?
Nothing concrete. Some historians argue he wouldn't have known how to administer such a precise poison.
Okay, so if not Kepler, then who?
Well, another theory points to the Jesuits.
The Jesuits, the religious order.
Exactly. They were powerful at the time, and Brahe's Protestant beliefs and his close ties to the emperor may have made him a target.
So religious intrigue. Now this is getting complicated.
It is, and then there's King Christian V.
The king who had the falling out with Brahe.
The very same. Some believe he might have held a grudge.
A vengeful king. That's a classic.
It is, but there's one more suspect.
Oh, who's that?
Eric Brahe, a distant cousin.
What did he do?
Well, his diary supposedly has entries that hint at a plot against Tycho.
A diary, so there's actual written evidence.
Well, the entries suggest that Eric wanted a position at court and saw Tycho as an obstacle.
Okay.
He also wrote about securing an invite to that banquet and visiting Tycho in the days before his death.
That's pretty suspicious.
It is, but unfortunately, after all these years, the mystery remains unsolved.
So we might never know for sure what happened to Brahe.
Probably not, but the fact that we're still debating it centuries later speaks to the enduring mystery of his death.
It's fascinating and frustrating at the same time.
I know, right? But before we get too caught up in the murder mystery, there's one more thing we should talk about.
You mean his missing nose?
You got it. When they opened Brahe's tomb in 1901, the metal plate that served as his nose was gone.
What happened to it?
No one knows for sure. Initially, they thought it was made of gold or silver.
Adding to the legend.
Right. But later tests suggest it was probably brass or some other alloy.
So it wasn't some precious treasure.
Apparently not, and to this day, its whereabouts are unknown.
So we have the mystery of the missing nose and the mystery of Brahe's death.
Exactly, two unsolved puzzles from the life of this remarkable astronomer.
So will we ever get any answers?
Who knows, maybe new evidence will surface someday with advancements in forensic science or archival research?
It would be incredible to finally solve these mysteries after all this time.
It would, but even without definitive answers, Brahe's story continues to captivate us.
And it's a reminder that history is full of unanswered questions.
And that's part of what makes it so fascinating.
Exactly. But before we wrap things up, we need to talk about Brahe's legacy. What impact did he have on the future of astronomy? It's funny, isn't it? Brahe spends his whole life observing the stars, collecting all this data to prove his theory.
Right, his geocentric model.
But in the end, it's Kepler, his rival, who uses that data to make the biggest breakthroughs.
It's true, Brahe's observations were incredibly precise, even though they didn't support his own ideas.
Yeah, they ended up being crucial for Kepler's laws of planetary motion.
Which completely revolutionized our understanding of the solar system.
It's amazing how science works sometimes.
It really is full of twists and turns.
And it shows that even when scientists disagree, their work can still build on each other's.
Absolutely. Brahe might have been wrong about the Earth being at the center.
But his data, combined with Kepler's genius, led to a much more accurate model of the cosmos.
And it wasn't just Kepler who benefited.
Right. His star catalogs and observations, they influenced astronomers for centuries.
Exactly. His work laid the groundwork for so many discoveries that came after him.
So what can we learn from Tycho Brahe? What are the big takeaways from his story?
Well, I think it reminds us that scientific progress isn't always a straight line.
Yeah, it's messy, full of detours and unexpected collaborations.
Exactly. And it also shows the importance of challenging accepted ideas.
Like Brahe did with his supernova observation.
Right. He challenged the idea of an unchanging universe and opened up a whole new way of thinking about the cosmos.
And of course, there's the importance of careful observation and data collection.
Brahe's legacy is built on that his meticulous records were crucial even though they didn't support his own theory.
It makes you wonder what else might be hidden in those observations.
Who knows, maybe there are still secrets waiting to be uncovered.
It's exciting to think about.
It is, and I think Brahe's story also reminds us that science is a human endeavor.
Yeah, it's driven by passion, ambition, and sometimes even a little bit of eccentricity.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Well said. I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive into the life of Tycho Brahe.
It's been a journey full of intrigue, mystery, and scientific discovery.
He was a truly remarkable figure, someone who pushed the boundaries of knowledge and left an indelible mark on the history of astronomy.
And even though we may never solve all the mysteries surrounding his life, his story continues to inspire and intrigue us centuries later.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration into the world of history and science.